life is a story that needs to be told. So, let us dive in today and touch another life. Hi, I'm Cj Sawhney, aka Bubbly. Today I'm at Alfred. I had come here to play table tennis with Harold, who is 90 years old, and he is still active and plays table tennis, which is called ping pong here. And now over to him.
Hi, I'm Harold Snyder, living in Alfred, and I was born in this house, married in this house, and I probably will leave in this house when the time comes. But it's a farm, and we all work together to keep it going. And any more you need?
Yeah, you
Is
tell
that
about your
enough?
family.
I have 4 daughters. My lovely wife just died of Alzheimer's, and so my family is all around me, walking distance. We're playing ping pong with a lot of the grandchildren and great grandchildren through the years, and I'm still playing. And these friends here have played ping pong in this house.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, almost got it.
Not bad. Oh,
Not good either.
another long. Good volley. This is a book that was published, and I didn't even know I was going to write a book. I just wrote some stories for my grandchildren for bedtime stories, gave them to my daughters, and then they were put in the paper because of the bicentennial of Alfred, and they published in the paper, and he wanted me to write more stories, so I wrote probably 50, 60 stories, one for each week of the bicentennial. And some people want to know if it was book form, and so the editor says, Harold, they want it in book form. And I says, well, I can't do it. You have to. And he says, okay. And then I told my oldest daughter, and she says, Dad, I was going to do that for your birthday present. So that's how this book come into being. Yeah. Okay. I want to find that picture. Does that? The book, when we finished printing the book, Sandy worked with me for a couple months. She says, Dad, what are you going to name it? And I said, I don't know. I haven't decided yet. I'll think on it. So about 2 weeks later, in the middle of the night, it just came to me, Harvest of Life. And people say, why? And I says, I don't know, but it just fits because the farm is nothing but life. It's animals, it's plants, it's trees, and then the children come, and then the workers come, and friends and relatives, and so it's been just a center of life, one way or another. Yeah. I was born in this house 90 years ago.
Okay.
It wasn't quite finished after 2 fires. And then dominoes sometimes, and there's always a puzzle. And we got one woman that works on that puzzle. And she's slow, but it's a hard puzzle. I'd go over there and anyways, yeah, back to the kids coming here. See, I wasn't going to be a teacher. I didn't know what I was going to be. Went to Alfred High School first, in 38, 39, and then to Alfred Elman. Combined school with Elm and Alfred Station. So I was a fairly good student, but I was raising the Dickens a lot too. And then, of course, there was always the farm work. And I started working when I was 11. Started getting up in the morning at 5 o'clock, helping my dad in the barn. So I was learning a lot, and I was in good shape. And I enjoyed it. So, being a good student, I became an athlete because I was of farm work. I was physically fit, so I did well in athletics. And then, in my junior year, we were farming 600 acres with pitchforks. Pitching everything: peas, beans, picking potatoes, pitching oats, filled 3 barns with hay. We just were busy all the time. When I strained my back that year, I wanted to do something physically, so I started running cross country, and I loved it, and I did well. And I thought I better get something other than farming for a vocation while I was in college. So I took teaching requirements and was able to be a teacher. And graduated in limbo, started helping my dad build another house where my mother and he were going to live when they retired. And my former principal come in, drove into the driveway, and he says, "Harold, I was wondering if you would like to teach the science classes down in Alfred Elman." And I just about got sick, nausea. I thought, oh my gosh. And I says, "Oh, give me a day. Let me think about it for a day." And she said, "Okay." And this was a principal that I was under all high school, during high school. And I was not a saint. I was not an angel. But it was just foolishness that I raised. Foolishness. Nothing harmful, nothing dishonest or all that junk. So the next day I talked to Dad about it. I said, "Okay, I'll do it." Well, they wanted me to teach chemistry, physics, biology, general science, and health. And I said, "Oh my gosh, my first year I don't know beans anyways. How about just chemistry or just physics this year and alternate?" Because when I was in school, it was physics one year, chemistry the next. He says, "Yeah, I think we can do that." And but then I had to teach the former students that were going to take chemistry. They had to go into physics, and most of them were girls, and they said, "Oh, I can't take physics." So I lost a lot of them, but I still had about 25 physics students, and we had juniors and seniors. So I had 3 periods of physics, period and a half for each group. I liked physics. I did well there. Biology, the book was horrible. There wasn't any sequence in it, but we got through it. General science I liked. Health was the kids that couldn't do regular science were in health class. So I taught them the basics of good living. Because I didn't smoke, I didn't drink, I exercised. So we worked along those lines. And it was good for them. Some of those kids didn't know too much of anything. Yeah. And on top of that, in order to get out of assemblies, field trips, and other responsibilities, I volunteered to do cross country, wrestling, and track. Free.
Oh, really?
Nowadays they get more than I got for the whole year of teaching. It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I loved it because I after standing and talking and sitting, I could get out and run, wrestle, or whatever. So that was 1 year, and what the heck is that? Is that a railroad train going by? So I signed up for another year with a $400 raise. I think I went from 34 to 3,800. And bus drivers get more than that now. But anyways, but then my dad, I knew he was getting weaker and doing less, and he was only in his 50s.
Mm-hmm.
That's the prime of life for most people. So he decided to sell the farm, this farm.
Okay.
And so I thought, oh my gosh. My older brother was farming it. My second brother was running a grocery store. My third brother was in the paratroopers. My sisters, of course, weren't available to buy a farm.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, okay, we'll go back to the farm. My back was much better. And so we moved in here in 56
Mm-hmm.
to a house that was, and a farm that was kind of run down. My dad was, after burning out twice and rebuilding twice, he was just worn out. And but the real problem was that he had aplastic anemia.
Oh,
Have you ever heard of that?
no.
It's bone marrow exhaustion.
Okay.
So no whites, very few white cells, very few red cells, and it just took the wind right out of his sails gradually. I knew he was failing.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so he died within a year.
Oh.
Yeah. So we had this farm, trying to make sense out of it. I mean, I wasn't professional at farming. I just did what he told me to, and I helped him out.
Mm-hmm.
But we fell into a good routine. I rebuilt a lot of the buildings, started redecorating the house inside, and had a couple wells drilled and just stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And bought some better cows, very little machinery. But back then it was good. It was just coming out of the war years, so I was happy, and I slept like a rock every night. Anyways, our first child came along in 56, a girl, Sandy.
Mm-hmm.
Ron knows her. And she lives, all the girls live within a mile.
Okay.
Within walking distance.
That's
Four
good.
girls. 4 girls on a farm.
Mm-hmm.
When I was young, my grandfather lived over across the creek. It was in the book, Grandma Across the Creek.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, oh, poor grandpa, he's got 4 girls. And they're helpers, but they're not like boys. And you don't want them to be like boys. So I felt sorry for him. Is that time?
We'll take a break.
Can you take a break?
Yeah, sure.
So when I was a young boy growing up, we were back and forth with my grandparents all the time. And I always felt sorry because he had 4 daughters on a farm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guess what? 30 years later, I had 4 daughters on a farm. 4 girls.
Yeah.
But I told them when they got older, like 9 or 10, I says, now when you're 10, I'm going to start waking you up at 5 in the morning, go to the barn with me, do chores. They said, okay. So they were fine with it.
Mm-hmm.
And we worked together in the milking line. There's a lot of steps. I can't get into all that. But we wanted to run a clean, efficient shop down there. And we did.
Mm-hmm.
And they loved it because they were in competition with trying to do the best work they could do. And we didn't have gutter cleaner. We didn't have a bulk milk tank. We didn't have pipeline milker, a hay bale conveyor in the barn. We didn't have those things, but that was okay.
Mm-hmm.
We were used to pitching everything by hand. And so we just enjoyed that, and we made some profit and expanded a little bit, not too much. Changed the whole system back to hay and grass instead of raising crops on a hilly farm with thin soil, clay soil, short seasons, a lot of erosion when heavy rains on hills.
So he took care of all that.
Yeah. And also, if you have open land, you have a drought year, it just dries out like a desert. So if you have grass cover, good protection. And I wanted to keep the cows outside as long as I could. So for 6 or 7 months, they were on grass except for milking. We had a rotated system, pastures first and then second cutting, put up electric fences all over the place and just move them from one plot to the other and keep that production up 60, 70 pounds a day. And things were going good. So, yeah, I bought another farm up the road for hay mainly, and that worked out fine. It'd give you more pasture down here, and then we had 3 more girls.
Okay.
About every 2 or 3 years, and we all sat around this table, old wooden table that my folks had started housekeeping with in 1925. They had moved a house by horses, 6 teams of horses, a half a mile, about 2 miles over the hill, to start their family life in, near his farm homestead. But after 4 years, they decided to leave the farm because his younger brother could take it over and buy this farm. Where they got the money, I don't know. But my great-grandfather owned it. He had bought this way back, late 1800s, I think. And so they moved here, and it was a 19-room mansion. I'm getting ahead of myself. But it was built by a Civil War veteran in the 1870s. It was a beautiful home. I have pictures. I think it's in my book.
Yeah, it is.
They moved in, rambling old barn, dug well out here for water, 25 feet deep, lined with stone, probably dug in the early 1800s. We have a pump on it now, a hand pump for watering flowers. And they started redoing the building just like I did when I moved in here 50 years later. And came home one night, everything's burning. They'd been to a Grange meeting, chimney burned out, spark started a haystack started the barn started the house. They were closer together then. And so they were completely wiped out, and he just knew nothing else to do then. It was depression. So he found some old buildings, tore them down. The family moved back to my grandparents, who, because of the fire, bought another farm, Grandma Across the Creek's farm, and let Dad and Mom and Frank move back to where they were living. It's where the equestrian center is now.
Okay.
So he started rebuilding. And then I was born in this house before it was finished in 1932. Now, where am I going with this one? And so that was the Depression, and things stayed still, but he had a few cows. He raised a lot of potatoes, beans, grain, oats, corn for the cows. And we just, as we grew into like 8, 9 years old, we started doing work. Started pulling beans, picking potatoes, pulling weeds, pitching hay, whatever. And we got through this late 30s, and then in 39, barn burns again. No one knows why. We were having a picnic, we had a company one night, and we were playing bingo in that room in there, and all of a sudden we heard snapping. Dad says, "Is that sleet on the window?" We both went over and looked out, and it was the flames breaking through the roof and snapping and cracking. And of course he runs and gets his hat and coat on, and we watch him run down. We wanted to get down. Dad and Mom wouldn't let us go. She said, "You stand on the cellar doors and don't go any further." Well, it was warm right out there, hot.
Okay.
But Frank went down and got his bicycle out. And I remember that. But Dad went in and got most of the cows out, because the fire burns from the top down in the barn. The hay starts, it's like a campfire. And you get all that insulation before it gets down in the bottom, but it comes down through the hay chutes. Shoots down there. And so he got most of them out, but the ones near the hay chute were pulling so hard you couldn't get it. But they pulled through and got out later.
Mm-hmm.
So he got all the cows out, lost 4 horses, all the calves, young stock, and bull. They were all destroyed. And then he ran to the car and he got that out. We used to park it in the barn. And I remember him driving it out underneath the big pine tree. Well, anyways, that was a horrible night. People came from all over, farmers. They had to split the dairy up and take the cows home during the night and get them in a barn so they could be milked next morning. And then they had to keep the house from burning with spraying water, whatever water they had. They had no power pump. Oh, the fire truck finally got here, and they sprayed the house. That was in '39.
Okay.
So we watched the barn burning until it got the wires going to the house. All of a sudden, we're in a dark house again in the middle of the night. Yeah. And so at 4 o'clock, I was told this. Dad come back in after doing that from 8 o'clock to 8 hours of being out there fighting that fire and doing what he could do. He comes in, and I had the croup upstairs. You know what the croup is? It's like you're shut. It's almost like a diphtheria. You lose your breath. You can't talk. So I come down the stairs coughing and trying to talk, and so Mom takes me over, and Dad had finally sat down in somewhere in that room, and she took me in and set him in his lap, melted butter, and he fed me melted butter for my croup. Now, that's a man that he'd been fighting that fire. He'd been through a major fire before. Now he was gonna have to rebuild another barn.
Yeah.
And in the first, he had to clean up dead animals, all the ashes, all the junk machinery, get it out of here, save what he could of the foundation. Those were hard then. There was no cement mixers, no chainsaws, no nothing. Nothing with any. Everything is done by hand. But what I'm getting at is that's the kind of a father he was. Instead of raising hob and throwing things and cursing, he was quiet about it. Yeah, so that's my memory of my dad as far as his temperament and everything. Yeah. So the next day, heck, it was a couple days later, I went with him over towards Sile. Well, yeah, you know where Sile is. The Vandermark Road. We went over on the Vandermark, up a hill, and there was an old farm up there, a big old rambling barn. And I went in the house with him, and this older lady was sitting there, laying there, and it was covered up, and the house was colder than the barn. And a young boy was standing next to her, probably a grandson. And he says, "I hear you would like to sell your barn." And she says, "Yes, I would." And he says, "How much would you want for it?" And she says, $250 for a big barn, typical of this. So the next day he was over there beginning to tear that barn down in the middle of winter. And you didn't have insulated coats and hats and gloves and socks and boots. And how he did it, I don't know. Started out with metal roofing, ripping it off, saving it, and then taking all the boards off, cleaning them up. He had help.
All that was brought here.
Yeah, and he piled it right out here, just beyond the driveway. Great big pile of boards and timbers. He must have had a lot of help because you know what the timbers are like in that barn. They're huge, 14 by 14, and they're 20 or 30 feet long, and then all the joists and rafters. Every time I go in there, I think,
How were they carried here? How were they brought here?
Some of the horse and wagon. We had one friend that had a truck, flatbed, small, not a big truck, and he helped. Jay Wilcox, yeah. But it was an all-winter thing. And of course, what he did in the meantime was build a temporary shed down on the old foundation, brought back a few cows for milk, had to go buy a new team of horses down at Thatcher's in Hornell. You know where that was. And we started a little semblance of farming while he was tearing that barn down. And, yeah, it was funny. I was so young then, but I'll never forget it. Yeah,
Still remember all those things.
Oh yeah, just like that. And yeah, so then they came in the summer. Kenny and I was 8 and he was 10. And I can remember Dad said, now your job will be to pitch sand and gravel and cement into this big cement mixer. It was as big as a car on end with a gasoline motor.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to pitch that stuff into the big mixer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And they'd come out and they had an automatic dump. That was modern, I thought. Dump it into wheelbarrows, take it in there, little by little, pour the foundation, splice it into the old foundation, pour the floor, and then build the barn. And there's pictures in my book of putting the rafters up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think there was. Yeah. So we began a new decade of farming. After the war, things began to pick up, and for a few years, I think he felt good about things.
Mm-hmm.
But then just about the time he was really getting good, his health failed. Yeah.
It's a sad thing.
Tell us about your wife. How did you meet your
I
wife?
had a few girlfriends in high school down in Alfred.
Okay.
Every time a new girl come, that seemed to be the thing. When a new girl came to Alfred Elman, everyone, straightened their tie and combed their hair and went about their best behavior.
Yeah.
Well, I did that with 3 or 4 different girls, and they were short-term girlfriends. And finally, 1948, this beautiful girl and her sister. I didn't know they'd come to school. That was their first date in school. I'm walking down the hall and I thought all these boys are around and a few girls were around these 2 beautiful, wonderful girls. So I walked up and I said, "Hi." And they just giggled and laughed.
Okay.
They were so embarrassed, so bashful, and so wonderful. And they just smiled, and laughed. So I said, "Hi again," same thing. I said, "Okay, there's nothing here for me." So I went on down to my classes, and they probably did too. But I did run into her once in a while. She was a cheerleader, very physical, athletic, and I was an athlete, so I was playing basketball and wrestling. And so I did see her after practice, and we just say hi. And she said, "Oh, I like your sweater. Where'd you get it?" And I said, J.C. Penney. Well, her mother worked there.
Okay.
But so we just laughed, and that was it. But one day I'm in the hall. I come out of the boys' basement, going back to the science room, and I'm walking along, and someone way down behind me goes. I turned around, and it was her, and she went like this.
Yes, I remember.
I says, "There is luck. There's luck ahead." So we began to, we went to skating parties, games, halftime in the games, or between the junior varsity and the varsity. We'd walk downtown and get a milkshake or Sunday, depending on where we were. And so we got really fond of each other.
Okay.
And as soon as I got in college, she was a senior, and as soon as she was graduated, we got married that fall, because we'd been going together a little over 2 years.
Okay.
And so I was teaching, and she got a job in a dry goods store down here in Alfred, Boswick's. They used to be in Andover, doesn't matter. And she was earning 68 cents an hour, or maybe 69.
68
And
cents.
I was doing chores for my rent down here in the house that we had built in 47, 48. My dad and the boys and a carpenter. And so I figured, well, that's okay. I'm getting $30 rent, $1 a day I was getting for doing chores. Well, it didn't bother me because I was living with my dad all the time and I was close to the family. So we did that for 4 years, 4 more years, until I graduated. And then I told her about the teaching. But then a year after that, we came back to this house and started our housekeeping. And I just joke. Back in the 30s and 40s and 50s, girls that had no hope of going to college, there was no money. They either would get married or work at home until something better came up, or get a like a secretarial job or something that line. And so when I was in college and later on teaching, I would tell the kids, "What are you going to do when you get out of school?" You know, blah. They didn't know. I said, "Well, you know, back in my day, you just find a mate, you get married, and set up housekeeping." And they said, "What do you mean by setting up housekeeping?" "Oh, you get a table and chair and find an old house and set up housekeeping." And they thought that was, well, that's what a lot of people did.
Yeah.
There was houses all around here, empty, vacated because of the Depression and the war. So I can remember my aunt when she got married, one of my mother's sisters. They said, "We're going to go look for a house." And I went with them, just a little kid. And we peeked in the windows and says, "Oh, there's nice wallpaper on the walls, and there's some tables in there and chairs." And those people just left those houses. They either couldn't pay the mortgage or they just had enough of it and went to the city to get a job. So, yeah, that was a joke. So, I ended up with 4 daughters. The farm was very successful. Oh, I didn't tell you about Bev. I didn't finish my story about Bev.
Okay.
When she came to Alfred Elman, I didn't know where she came from. Found out it was Canasteel. But then she told me the whole shooting match. When she was a little girl, they were on a farm down in Liberty, Pennsylvania. It's on Route 15 South. And it was not a good farm, and her father was trying to drive truck and farm it. And you can't do that. If you're going to be a farmer, you got to stay on the farm and get to work. And the mother was trying to work in the store, and I don't know, it must be the grandkids. Parents were taking care of the kids half the time. But anyways, it was not a good situation. And the father had been adopted. He was half Indian. And he didn't know his parents. Well, he had a sister older than him that had been searching for him.
Oh.
Wanted to know where her little brother was adopted. She finally found him, and she said, "Arnold, you should come to Canasteel and work for the Erie Railroad," which was roaring then because of the war and stuff. And he says, "Okay, I'll do it." So the family moved to Canasteel, and I was down there with my dad cutting timber for this house we were building. And I thought, I wonder if I ever saw her when I was walking down the streets and going through Canasteel. Probably didn't. But they were there. Then the Elman Dam. Do you know where the Elman Dam is?
Yes.
The Corps of Engineers decided to build that for protection of cities down the stream. And 1947, 48, 46, 47. So they began to build the dam. All the houses in the dam site had to be evacuated. So her parents bought a house for $500, moved it up higher in the Alfred Elman district.
Okay.
And that's how they happened to come to school. So if they hadn't built that dam, I would have never... I told my daughters, you wouldn't be here and I don't know where I'd be. But because of her, and she was so wonderful, she adapted it. I mean, I don't know if I was headstrong or not, but you know, you commit to each other, but the wife is supposed to submit to the husband. Well, she did. And she never complained. And I didn't overpower her. I didn't put... We worked very nice together.
You were compatible.
Very compatible. She was just wonderful. And so she raised my daughters. She helped me when I needed it. She drove tractors. She washed the bulk tank. But I didn't make her do any heavy work. She had the garden and the lawn, flowers, the kids, and all kinds of friends.
She was good in cooking.
Very good.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. Yep. People came far and wide to eat her food.
Very
And I
good.
mean it because the kids, we had a lot of the kids in here that worked, you know. But anyways, so that's how I met her. And yeah, so for 70, we were married 70 years of joy and bliss, I say.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when the day she passed, we were sitting around the table, the daughters and the undertaker, for a better name. And I said to him, I says, you know, I just had 4 thoughts while I'm sitting here, and she had just passed away. We watched her last heartbeat on the finger monitor. We knew she had to go.
Oh.
She had Alzheimer's, extreme,
Mm-hmm.
and after 10 years,
Very sad.
COVID and pneumonia.
Oh my
Well, they're the takers of the old people.
Yeah.
And so we knew we had to let go. And, but she hung on so long. And I told her, I said, Bev, you've got to let go, because we were almost hoping that she would let go because she was starving to death and she just was so sick. So we watched her. But I said to him, I says, I just had 4 thoughts. He says, could you tell them to me? I says, yeah, I had written them down. I hope I can get them back now. I says, few accomplishments in her young life, because her family was not like our family was, or your family. It was a hard family. His father was a drinker, and there was not much love in that family.
Mm-hmm.
And so I couldn't wait to get her out of that house. And I said, few accomplishments. She didn't have possibility of accomplishing it. You know, she did what she was told to do.
Mm-hmm.
That was it. And the next one was low expectations. She didn't expect to go to college because there was no money. She didn't know what to expect.
Mm-hmm.
She just figured maybe she'd get a job somewhere and start up. And so the next one was, but a heart of gold. And that's what I was attracted to her by.
Yeah.
She was the sweetest person.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next one, number 4, was, and a desire to love and nurture.
Mm-hmm.
And not only just kids in our family, but anyone. She had more friends. I mean, you know, I see pictures where she's got her hand on a student's hand and talking.
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of a gal she was.
Mm-hmm.
She just, she was great. We gotta go.
Yeah, now tell us about your hobbies.
Hobbies.
Yeah.
Well, my first hobby was working, because by the time we were 7 or 8, we were out in the fields,
Mm-hmm.
pulling weeds, pulling beans, picking potatoes, stuff like that.
Okay.
Because we had to, because everything was by hand. My dad needed help.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he was lucky he had 4 boys. And but then we had games in here. We played Tinker Toys, were our favorite game.
Okay.
That was about the only thing we had to play with. But we tried ping pong on our dining room table,
Mm-hmm.
and it was high, we were short, it was hard and small.
Okay.
So it was a failure. So it's not going to work. So I just forgot about that, and we went out and slid downhill. That was our main thing in the winter, is sliding downhill. And tobogganing. Tried skiing, but the skis back then were just simple things with strap.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't do anything to speak of. Yeah, but we had a lot of fun. Sliding was the main thing. I wrote a little story about the sleds
Okay.
and sliding.
Mm-hmm.
I'll get it out and show you later. But anyways, along with work, school, and sliding downhill, building caves,
Mm-hmm.
and then later on, when my family started, the girls started getting older, we started playing ping pong.
Mm-hmm.
And I fixed the cellar up, put in a ping pong table and a little pool table, and we had a lot of fun there.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a so-so player.
Okay.
But I began teaching all my helpers
Mm-hmm.
and my daughters and college students. Well, some of the college students could beat me.
Okay.
So I thought I've either got to get better or
Mhm.
quit because I don't like to be beaten.
Mhm.
And so I began working at it, and there were so many college kids here and helpers all the time, and all I did was play ping pong in my free time,
Mhm.
which wasn't a lot then. But yeah, I got pretty decent,
Mhm.
and then we had some foreign students come in, and the Chinese and the Koreans are always good.
Yeah, they are very
And
good.
man, I began to improve a lot, and we battled that out. And I actually,
Okay.
there wasn't any college student finally that I couldn't beat,
Mhm.
hardly. And that, I shouldn't even be saying this, but one night we always had a Christmas game night at our house for InterVarsity Christian Fellowship,
Okay.
and the four daughters would bring food.
Mhm.
Bev would fix all kinds of food. And one night we had 45 students in this house
Really.
playing games,
Mhm.
ping pong,
Good.
pool,
Mhm.
take three,
Mhm.
and all kinds of table games. But this one guy, one year, he says, "Oh, I think we should have a tournament, a
Mhm.
championship tournament in ping pong, the night of the game night." And I says, "Fine with me." He says, "And I'll bring the trophy." I
Okay.
says, "Okay." He says, "And I'm going to win the trophy," he said about himself. I
Okay.
says, "Fine."
Mhm.
And so the night came, and we began to, there was about 30 kids that wanted to get in on it. And so that, elimination up through, winner keeps going.
Mhm.
And I, being the oldest person, I was in my 80s,
Mhm.
yeah, early 80s, or maybe late 70s. It finally come up to a winner, and I was the oldest person. I said, "Oh, it's your turn."
Mhm.
So I played him, and I beat him.
Oh, really?
And he had to present the trophy to me, the one that he
He had to
brought.
take.
He brought it.
That's good.
And
Mhm.
my daughter just had contact with him. He's out in California. He's very successful.
Mhm.
He's in a speakers
Oh.
system.
Okay.
And she says, "Do you remember that night when my dad beat you downstairs and pinged me?" "Yeah, I remember it." But he's famous. Okay. That's ping pong.
Mhm.
And now I've taught all my grandchildren, 20 of them. Some of them can beat me now.
Mhm.
And I'm working on great grandchildren. And one of them is, for his age, is the best, almost the best player I've had in the family.
Mhm.
And so that's where I'm at. And I'm beginning to recede as they
Mhm.
improve. But yeah, I still enjoy it. It's one thing I can do without using damaged muscles.
Mhm.
It keeps me loose. Yeah, that and dancing.
You
But
do.
when my wife began to fail, we danced until she couldn't really do anything. So that's how I could be dancing with we had a special dance that we did. Yeah. After I was 40,
Mhm.
when I reached the year 40, I was qualified to run for the Masters in the
Okay.
Masters tournaments.
Mhm.
And they had them in everything. But
Mhm.
I was a runner, so I wanted to go for the running part of it. And so I started training again. And yeah, I had ruined my calf muscles in the 60s.
Okay.
I took a challenge against the college wanted me to come down every year and run with their runners, and I could beat them all for about 10 years.
Mhm.
But then I was farming more than I was running, and they said, "Come on down and give so-and-so some competition." I said, "Oh, I'm not in shape. I'm not running, I'm farming."
Mhm.
I says, "I don't think I can do it." I said, "Oh, come on, you can do it." I said, "All right," because I like competition, but I knew I would be in trouble maybe. They had a good runner down there. And so I went down, and I thought, "Oh, this is great." The first 3-4 miles, I had the capacity from working on the farm all the time, but I didn't have the legs strength that I needed for running. That's totally different. It's toe push off. So about 3.5 miles, my legs, calf muscles begin to spasm, tighten up. And I thought I should stop right now. But I thought, oh, maybe you can get through this. I was neck and neck with the guy. And so I ran another mile, destroyed my calf muscles.
Oh.
Took second. And I thought, you just threw away your career in 5 minutes. And so I was out of commission for 2 or 3 years. I could hardly push off my toes, believe it or not. I was walking flat-footed around the farm doing the work. And but then they begin to come around, and then the Masters cycle come. And that was about 15 years after this. So I thought, okay, I'm going to start training real slow, see what happens. And I did. And I got invited to some tournaments, and I began to win again. And so I was all excited. So Bev and I would go any place where there was a race, Masters race, 40 and above.
Okay.
Yeah. And we enjoyed them. We'd stay overnight, go to hotels, and we went to Cornell was the best. Met me. She says, 90? What's your secret? It was an eye doctor. She says, you look 70. I shouldn't be saying this, but this is life.
Yeah.
I says, no drinks, no
Yeah.
smokes, good food,
Yes.
lots of exercise.
That's great.
Exercise is, that's half of it right there. Yeah, exercise is so important. From the time I can remember, I was moving. We ran the hills, the woods, the creeks. We were busy all the time, and then work came, and we were ready for it. And then when running and wrestling and sports came, it was just such a piece of cake. You know, it was easy. So exercise is the answer, because your vascular system needs to be used, just like your muscles.
Yep.
It's like a creek. A fast-moving creek is clean and pure. A sluggish creek is full of pollution and sludge, and that's what happens in your arteries.
Yep.
You got to keep washing that out. Anyways, that and a good wife.
Yeah.
A happy marriage
Yeah.
is longevity. Yeah. If you're battling it out, it's not good. Yeah. Yeah, I've been crusading against alcohol and tobacco all my life, because when I was a young boy, I could see what it was doing to aunts, uncles, neighbors, companions, athletes in college. We had a couple of alcoholics on our cross-country team, believe it or not, way back then. I just saw it destroy people and families. And smoking, same way. Guys smoking, emphysema, bronchitis, just depletion of energy. Yeah. Okay, that's it. I'm still fighting it, but I'm not making much progress.
Okay.
But my family is clean.
Very good.
Yeah.
About your diet, what you have?
Well, we grew up on fats and meat, vegetables from the garden, sauerkraut, pancakes. We would put bacon and sausage grease on our pancakes.
Okay.
2 teaspoons. And we were so skinny that people thought we were underfed. We were eating as much as we could eat of good food.
Okay.
3 times a day. But because of the cold houses, the extra work we had to do, and just being busy all the time, burn those calories off. We were never fat. Not overeating. Yeah. I just heard a slogan the other day: eat less, live longer.
Correct. That's correct. Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.